I'm going to give you my opinion. You give me yours. I think Tuesday for Trump, we'll go down the road of who won and who lost. For Trump, is it fair to say it was a mixed bag? Not a great day, but not a bad day.
Well, it depends upon where you look. You were talking when I came in, I was listening to you talking about past instances in which the incumbent president, where he had control of both the House and Senate, in midterm elections, would lose far more seats in the House and in the Senate than President Trump did, in this race. I kind of look upon the thing. There was kind of a little something for everybody. There were things that the Democrats could cheer about, certainly. It was a race where across the nation where, some places it was good for the Republicans, in the Senate races particularly, and then in the House, we always thought that from the beginning it was going to be about a 35-seat pickup, and that's ostensibly the way it came out. The governorships and some of the down ballot races, in the several states, that was where I saw the best pickup for the Democrats, in that they flipped 7 governorships that had been held by the Republicans and then picked up 350 down ballot state legislative seats. Now, they always go on about Obama and his 8 years in office in the various U.S. House years. He wound up losing in the state legislatures 1,000 state legislative seats.
Lost 700 in his first midterm.
Yeah, and then they got a few back and it bounced around. But that's about a third of what Obama lost. Where the Democrats were able to come back. Those governorship races had a lot of pull down, in the several states. We haven't seen figures on it, but the Democrats picked up a lot of state constitutional offices and lieutenant governorships and all this kind of thing, which is hard to measure and whatever. I think it was kind of a purple mishmash rather than a blue wave or a red wave.
I want to make a comment. I want to hear your take on it because I've tried to analyze it, and obviously you've got far more experience than I do in evaluating and properly articulating what the history of that election is opposed or transposed to others. Candidates still matter. I mean, we live in a very hyper-partisan age, and we're deeply divided, but good candidates win whether they're Democrat or Republican in the right places.
That's right. When you've got a good candidate and you've got somebody who's a long-time incumbent in a state where it's heavy for the incumbent's party and whatever, like Beto O'Rourke down in Texas. Now, he shouldn't have gotten as close to Cruz, as he did, but he was a good candidate. Now, we don't care for what he was talking about.
Sure.
And he ran as a straight out liberal Democrat.
Didn't apologize for it.
Didn't apologize for it and put a lot of his time in on hitting every county and every small town and whatever in all parts of Texas and getting turnout. The thing that saved Cruz was he got about a third of the Hispanic vote. That was one of the things that O'Rourke still wasn't able to crush him with Hispanic voters. But good candidates beat bad candidates or weak candidates. Well-funded candidates beat underfunded candidates. I mean, it goes on and on. There were some pretty good Democratic candidates, but they were in states like, I have a lot of favoritism towards, Phil Bredesen in Tennessee. He was a fine man,
But Trump's approval's there in the mid-60s, and it's tough to beat a Republican.
That's right. That's right. And I never thought that the Marshburn lady was really all that good a candidate, but they stuck with but it was it was a good race. Mm-hmm. And the only one that really surprised me was Joe Donnelly, I beg your pardon. I thought he would wind up winning. He was ahead in some of the late polls.
Correct.
And, Obama went in there and campaigned for him up around Gary, where there's a heavy black vote and whatever. And it's also an interesting state because it's 2 time zones. And when it closed at 6, he was way behind. And I thought, well, wait till the 7 o'clock hour clocks in, he'll pull it at least even. Well, he never got even. I mean, he got thumped.
The polls missed that one.
They missed
They just missed that one. That was one they missed.
But a lot of these state polls on state races, you just can't tell. Now, let me tell you another thing. There was a lot of ticket splitting that went on. You were talking about Mike DeWine making it in Ohio. Well, he got, 52, 53%. He was safely over. But at the same time that he was being elected governor of Ohio, the man who beat him for a U.S. Senate seat years ago, Sherrod Brown, got like 63%. Mm-hmm. In other words, what that meant is a lot of people in Ohio were voting for DeWine for governor and Sherrod Brown for senator.
Is it fair to say that what was done in Ohio, because I saw those numbers as well, were not done in Florida? When you look at DeSantis and Scott and Gillum and Nelson, those numbers track fairly close to the same. It looks like the Republicans voted Republican and the Democrats voted Democrat in Florida.
That's right. Absolutely no question about it. All the talk had been how Gillum, that there would be people voting in Florida for Gillum that had never voted before or had a weak turnout in the past and whatever, and that he would help to pull Nelson in. I don't think that didn't turn out to be true. They ran very, very close together. As a matter of fact, the incumbent senator, Nelson, ran somewhat better. Mm-hmm. Now, you were talking about how that race is over.
They're still counting in Broward County.
They're still counting. And if Nelson gets close enough in, he gets not an automatic recount where they just run the stuff all over again in each jurisdiction. He get a hand count.
They get 1/4 of 1%. I think state statute is if it gets within 1/4, and right now it's about 0.22%.
It's going to be close. And what we possibly could see is a replay of what we saw down there in 2000 with a hand recount, where people are looking at punch cards and they're looking to see about pimples and partial punches. And that thing could go on for some time, so. You
and I talked a lot last Tuesday, and I talked a lot a couple of weeks ago about the redistricting in Pennsylvania. I think Pennsylvania was 13-5 going in, and I think the Democrats, if I'm not mistaken, picked up 4 seats, and now it's equally divided at 9-9. Pennsylvania was a big part of helping the Democrats take over the House of Representatives.
And California.
California as well.
And then there were the bad part for the Republicans is the suburbs. Now, when I was coming along since I was a kid watching this stuff and participating in it, the suburbs were always the place where the Republican vote, after getting beat to death in the cities, when you got to the suburbs, I remember old Reagan, when anytime he'd run, he'd get beat to death in the cities. But boy, when that suburban vote started coming in, man, he'd win 65, 70% of the vote out in a lot of those suburbs. Well, I don't know if this shift of the suburbs to the Democratic side, particularly in the U.S. House races, mm-hmm. is a permanent thing.
They don't particularly care for Trump. They just don't particularly care for Trump.
They don't like Trump. And, look at all the women candidates who won, the women Democratic candidates, all the governorships. You look at those new pickups for the Democrats in the U.S. House races. I bet you 4/5 of them are women.
But on the flip side of that, don't like Trump suburban debate, rural America's never been more united behind one candidate. Rural America's always. I grew up around a lot of Democrats in rural South Carolina. Rural America is in lockstep in support of President Trump and his agenda.
Yes, and I find that so.
It's odd.
It's interesting to me because, one of the rural people love to hate New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And where's Trump from? He's from Queens, and as a wheeler dealer and all this kind of thing. You would think that he would be the last person in the world that rural people would really go for.
But that's that's the butter on his bread. That's his go-to voting block.
It is. And when he campaigned around the clock for these U.S. Senate, Republican U.S. Senate candidates, particularly in those states that had gone for him just 2 years before, man, he would hold them in these small towns and in rural areas of the state where he had done best in 2016.
Which makes sense. And everywhere he went, his candidate did well. I think Trump realized the writing on the wall in relation to the House. He wanted to try to shore up some of the potential flips and holding on to Senate seats. I want to ask you a simple question as it relates to national politics, and then I want to go to South Carolina. We'll take a break before we do that, Rev. But is Trump better off today than he was Monday, worse off today than he was Monday, or about the same in relation to running for re-election in 2020?
You don't know. Now, when we were talking about the U.S. House losses and congressional losses for Clinton in 1994, and everybody. I remember back then, some of your big name Democrats were talking about, we're going to talk Clinton out of not running.
Find another candidate. I remember that.
Find another candidate. They never talked that much about Obama, but there was a lot of talk that, Obama dead on arrival 2 years from now if the Republicans could come up with a decent candidate. Well, what happened? Both of them got reelected. Clinton got like 49% against Bob Dole, but it was, to become one of only 3 presidents to be elected to 2 terms in office and never get above a popular vote majority. Grover Cleveland, Woodrow Wilson, and William Jefferson Clinton. But in other words, what you're saying to me, asking me, is he worse off now running for re-election in 2020 than he was? I don't know. I don't think so. Never count an incumbent president out.
The power of the incumbency.
The power of the incumbency, the ability to raise money, and you don't know. Again, now I don't think Donald Trump is going to change his brand any. It's going to be hard for him. He did say at the White House press conference that, he was willing to work with the Democrats. That was and he said they'll have their measure, the proposal on health care and infrastructure and whatever, and that might be a place as long as they lay off me.
Stop the investigation and impeachment talk.
Stop the investigation and all this kind of thing. What I didn't like about that news conference was that he went down the list of Republican House members who were defeated, who, like Mia Love, she's from Utah, I think, and she's the only black Republican incumbent, and she lost. And she said there wasn't much love from Mia Love. Barbara Comstock, he said, she just ran away from me. She didn't embrace. Well, good God. She was in a district that had gone by, 12 points for Mrs. Clinton.
She had to,
and she had to run almost as an independent. And whatever, and she got whipped, so he was kind of warning these fellas, next time you folks better be in line.
No question about it. We got to take a break. We're going to take this break. We'll come back. Trump did extend kind of an olive branch to the Democrats, not so much to the media. We'll talk about that. the first press conference post midterm elections. Good morning, PD Live 95, Forest Lake Greenhouse. is our sponsor. Back in a minute.